Welcome to the podcast with me, your host, Dr. Debra Durst, and I have a special guest on, a return guest. We're lucky enough to have him again, and it's Dr. Edwin Spencer. So welcome. He is, before he even says anything, so top shoulder and elbow surgeon, and again, awesome with patients, and really is very science-based and way smarter than me. So we brought him on so he can talk to us about a lot of the stuff that happens with injury. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about peptides because we've been working together. Right. So Dr. Spencer, please
That's
say
quite
hello.
the introduction. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to live up to that.
No, you will.
So one of the ways that this started is that we wanted to talk about what we can do before surgery and after injury to get better, and that was nutritional stuff. And now we're on to the next level, which is after you optimize the nutrition and optimize the macro and micronutrients, we're on to bigger and better things, which can be making sure that your testosterone level is maximized, and then peptides. So peptides are a huge thing now. I mean, there's so much on peptides. It's there's a lot of podcasts on it, a lot of people asking about it. It used to be kind of an underground thing. Now it's something. Now it's something that I think was always legitimate, but now we're figuring out all the uses for the peptides in repair and regeneration and recovery. But then there's also other stuff that we can use, like CJC-1295, Ipamorelin, tesamorelin, things like that, which are growth hormone releasing peptides that can actually allow you to heal, build
to even further optimize,
and build lean muscle mass, a little bit of body comp, right? You're losing a little bit of fat. So,
which those percentages are thrown off. Like again, as we get older, we get more fat, subcutaneous, and less muscle. And so just being able to reverse that again.
And so one of the things that happens, obviously we've talked about the middle age thing, but we undergo sarcopenia. The muscle cells start becoming senescent, and I think there's more peptide medicine, more microbiology medicine that is getting focused on that cellular level of kind of decreasing that senescence and making these muscle cells still stay around. Obviously, exercise is going to be the biggest key, right? Resistive exercise, not just cardiovascular. Cardiovascular is important, but resistive exercises.
Especially as we get older, resistance, yes.
Weight training in diabetics, that's shown to decrease their blood glucose level, decrease the insulin resistance. So how does CJC then affect our ability to build muscle mass and decrease that fat we don't want and the body comp?
And improve healing, I think, which is
one
of the huge things. I think as we age, and we always start there with our patients, as we age, we start to notice changes. And so, again, part of that is we're doing the same things. We're eating the same stuff. We're as active as we used to be, but now we're gaining weight, gaining weight around the middle and not building muscle like we used to, but also that injury happens more easily. And then once we get injured, then we don't repair. And a lot of times we get recovery issues, right? So I'm working out, but now I'm not recovering as fast. So we kind of hear the same things across the board, men and women, and especially when they're active and they're fit and they're already doing their part. And so I think that's where that patient comes into play, right? You get a patient that has been injured, but they're doing everything they know how to do. They're in front of you because we need to repair it. And that's what ortho is about, right? Is repair and healing. And so now they're coming to you from the orthopedic and the surgery. But what I love is that you're actually looking at it now from a different aspect. And so what else can you do in addition to what has historically been done? And that's where peptides come into play. So I think that you can optimize growth hormone because that's anabolic and healing in the body. But now we can optimize growth hormone, which also declines with age steadily. And now we can optimize that with the peptides. And so you talk about CJC. That's probably our favorite one to use with optimizing growth hormone.
And that's commonly used with Ipamorelin, and there's a reason why, right? I mean, tesamorelin was one of the first ones that came out, and then Ipamorelin, but that seems to be combined with CJC-1295. And what is that reason?
So Samorelin was actually the earliest one, and Samorelin was the same thing, a growth hormone releasing hormone. but they would actually, it had some effects on other hormones like prolactin and cortisol. So you would affect other hormones. And so CJC has not been shown to do those same effects in studies. And so it doesn't have effects on the other hormones. And then tesamorelin was almost like a third generation where you'll get a more sustained release of IGF. One or more sustained level of that. And so almost used for like HIV muscle wasting, more severe conditions a lot of times just because of that sustained release, and you wouldn't want to be on it for long term. But anyhow, so now we use CJC kind of middle of the road, not as, and it works well. We pair it frequently with Ipamorelin, and you can do that with with tesamorelin too. But with Ipamorelin, it's a growth hormone releasing peptide. So it kind of activates the receptor as well, that growth hormone releasing hormone receptor
Right.
that releases growth hormone without it being like a releasing hormone. Because CJC, I guess that's a little confusing. CJC acts like growth hormone releasing hormone, acts on the pituitary to get it to release growth hormone. Well, this activates that same receptor. And so it just enhances your growth hormone release from the body.
About how much does that increase your growth hormone?
The exact percent, that I'm not sure, but I know you do saturate receptors at the dosing that we're like using. So almost like, I would say like 100 mics, so if you were a 70 kilogram, a milligram or a mic per kilogram.
Right.
But that CJC, so I'm not sure that I know that exact number with Ipamorelin and how it increases it, but we almost pair it with tesamorelin with all of those. The issue is there was a GH, like a growth hormone, GRP2 and 6 that used to be paired with it again, but had different effects on those other hormones too. And so there were also some hunger issues and other side effects that you would get with those. So Ipamorelin is kind of the go-to growth hormone releasing peptide.
Okay.
So
So, from a reparative standpoint, obviously, something like CJC-1295 and the rest of the peptides in that same class are going to increase our ability to build muscle, but also increase our ability to repair tendon and to repair ligament.
are you talking about BPC or the
More,
CJC still?
more CJC-1295 and the growth hormone releasing peptide
So
analogs.
I think all of those, if you look at like basically what it's doing is optimizing growth hormone in the body. And growth hormone is anabolic, just like the different hormones anabolic that we naturally produce, testosterone being one, growth hormone being another, insulin being one, and IGF, being one. And so,
Which is kind of the end product, right?
Correct,
For the
yes.
growth hormone is the increase in
yes,
IGF-1.
and IGF. And so when you get growth hormone releasing hormone, which is CJC, that acts on the pituitary to release growth hormone goes to the liver and increases IGF-1. And so that has all the effects, right? So that's acting on the muscle, which we would love to get into in another. I would love to, talk about those effects downstream of IGF on the muscle and what it does, because there's lots of different pathways that are touched on. But I think to that point, IGF does require almost that androgens are optimized in, growth hormone too, to have those effects.
Right.
So I think they go hand in hand. It's all synergistic. So IGF will work, but having those others present, which is why when we're young and we have all those present, we heal better.
Now, so growth hormone is released mainly at night, right? I mean, that's when we get a spike in growth hormone. So, is there a timing that you need to be cognizant of when you're taking these growth hormone releasing peptides? Does it have an effect on sleep in addition to what we've already spoken about with lean muscle mass and body comp and healing?
I think that if you are talking about sleep, obviously sleep is important to healing as well,
Right.
but it also depends on when you're going to sleep, to answer some of those questions, I guess, because when you're sleeping, it's going to be, and that gets into the whole sleep cycle. Like, when we wake, we have certain, like cortisol spikes, and then that kind of sets our melatonin. And if you're on a regular schedule, when you're getting ready to go to sleep, that second dose, so we typically will dose CJC twice a day, as you know. We do it twice a day on an empty stomach, but that nighttime one is important because, and if you were to choose one, it'd be the nighttime because that's when growth hormone is normally spiking in short spikes multiple times during the night. And it is a short half life. So taking it before bed, and yes, it helps sleep. It's actually one of the earliest effects that you get when patients go on it is the improvement in sleep that it happens. And again, I always just say growth hormone kind of grossly does everything test does, but almost better, but not necessarily. That's just simply stating that it can, improve brain fog and energy, endurance, but muscle building, decreasing fat, improving insulin sensitivity,
Almost
all
turning
the
back the
things.
clock.
Yeah.
Almost turning
Well,
back the
yeah.
clock and making everything better, getting the cells back to where they were before. So at the cellular level, we're actually getting healthier.
And I think cell health is so important. And I think that's where the peptide. So I think like to really, really geek out on peptides, right? You have to look at the cell because that's the effect. We're giving that cell back that efficiency that it's lost with time. And also, just recovery and repair and, again, synthesizing things that it used to be able to. But yeah,
Right.
I
One
agree.
one quick question then that I've heard from some patients that are really into this is a question about oncology. So if we're taking
Mm-hmm.
growth hormone, the only studies I know where people are actually giving growth hormone are in kids when they're growth
Or
hormone deficient.
deficient. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that there's an increased risk of cancer there, but those are kids, so it's a different sort of deal. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any studies out there that have shown that there may be an increase in cancer if you're taking
Cancer.
a growth hormone stimulant?
So I have not seen studies with the peptides that have shown an increased cancer risk. But obviously it's still like I shouldn't say that, not increased risk, but increased incidence. Because I think technically speaking, anytime you're increasing growth hormone, you could potentially, obviously increase the growth of something. So we just are very black and white with if there's an active tumor or a history of a tumor, we're not using it. Without that, we all could have something that we don't know about. So using that is okay. I think where I feel best with it, that I haven't seen studies to show an increased incidence, but you're also stimulating your own release of growth hormone, and you really can't overstimulate. Where when you're using growth hormone, which is pretty much illegal and highly regulated, if not illegal, so we don't use any of that. But then you're shutting down your own system and giving it for an extended period of time. And most people give that in a higher dose than usual, too. So, this is really going to saturate a receptor when you give that dose, and you can't overstimulate it then. And if you're cycling off of it and then onto it, then you're also not going to down regulate receptors. So, you'll keep your system operating the right way.
Yeah.
So, you're not shutting down your system like you do with growth hormone. So, I have not seen that, but we're very strict with if you have a history of a tumor, an active tumor or history, that we're not using it
Okay.
in that. But even the insulin resistance that exists with growth hormone, you don't run into that with CJC either. Just because you're not overstimulating, because obviously growth hormone would also be a great drug if you could,
Right, but you don't retain that
monitor.
negative
Yes,
feedback
correct.
loop where your body is able to keep itself
Yes.
in check.
You shut down your own system, in fact.
Right.
So this is actually just optimizing your system. Those spikes still exist in the brain. They're just not as high as they used to be in our early 20s. They're just blunted now.
All right, and I'm sorry. One
Yeah, no.
last thing, just so that
Well, I
the
want to
the
know what your
listeners.
patients are asking so that we can help with that.
Well, this is my question because when I was researching this, there's if you can explain a little bit to the audience about DAC versus without DAC with the CJC, because if you've got a sustained growth hormone, you can get, I understand, organomegaly. You kind of get this big kind of pot belly. The organs get bigger, everything gets bigger. Growth hormone is meant to be spiked, as you said,
Correct.
throughout the day, specifically at
Correct.
night. So, can you comment on the DAC versus no DAC?
I don't even think that I think you answered your own question already. I think that, like, almost, right? Because I think that spike thing is like the key. Like, our own system still being operational, not shut down by an exogenous, agent like growth hormone. So if we're giving growth hormone, we're shutting it down. We're not allowing our system to work. But yes, those spikes are going to happen throughout the night when we sleep, and that's what you want. So growth hormone releasing hormone, I guess I always say that they simulate neurotransmitters or hormones in the body. So CJC is simulating growth hormone releasing hormone.
Right.
That's acting in the brain with a very short half-life. If you add DAC to it, which is drug affinity complex, then you increase that half-life to 8 days. That's not natural to the body. Although a lot of the studies that we looked at had that prolonged agent in there and still, showed good effects in blood test and muscle building and effects without adverse effects, but still, in fact, in some of the things, because growth hormone, when they used to give it for infusions, thinking it would be helpful, it had such a short half-life that maybe that longer one would be better, but again, that's why we give no dosing outside of to patients directly, because we don't know what agent, where they're getting it, or CJC, is it something that has a prolonged half-life, or is the dosing that we're doing with a short half-life better? So we don't use DAC, because I think you've answered that question just by saying those spikes, in intermittent spikes that are short-lived,
More natural.
is more natural. Yeah. I just think that we have the ability now to optimize growth hormone in addition to testosterone or hormones. So if we look at women, we're talking about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which is the most circulating hormone in a woman's body too. So even though
Hopefully.
a man, optimally, because then they function a lot better.
A lot better.
Yeah. So I think that when you're looking at that, progesterone and estrogen will optimize, but testosterone is 10 times higher in a woman's body than progesterone and estrogen. Men, obviously, it's higher than us, but also men have a ratio of testosterone to estrogen, and women have it too. But in each one of them, it's a lot higher, the testosterone, than the estrogen in ratio. So I think optimizing that now is key in the fact that we can do growth hormone. So when women and men hit perimenopause and menopause, almost always at andropause, some point we're going to actually gain fat, reduce muscle mass, and now we can optimize both our hormones, natural to men and women, and then growth hormone now with peptides. So we can, again, maybe cheat occasionally or not work out, as hard or harder than you did when you were younger, because now you can have those.
Make the workouts count more,
correct.
and this is more preventative medicine. This is making you better than what you were before, with at least the studies that I've seen. I think that you've seen that there really isn't undue risk of cancer or anything else untoward. So this really seems to be a really special area of medicine that we can explore.
It is definitely an expanding area of medicine, and it's becoming more popular because I think that patients and people are looking for solutions. And again, we're 10 years out with studies in medicine to actually implement anything. And by the time we actually implement it, it's probably not any longer valid. And then we have drug companies that are sponsoring studies. So are we really getting real results? Because a lot of that stuff, when you actually read or a little twist on, the actual facts that are in the study. But further, you're never going to get drug company sponsored studies for peptides that are natural to the body. So we probably won't see large studies, but the studies we have seen have been very promising with outcomes and not, any significant adverse effects that I've seen in studies. Obviously, we would love to have long-term studies, and we would love to have randomized controlled studies, but I don't know how quickly we're going to get there, right?
Yeah, without someone funding that, it's probably not going to happen.
No, probably not going to happen. So, but we can definitely do patient outcome, kind of data and gather some to at least do some observational, because there's been a lot of that too that's been reported, just studying patients as we do them. So I'd love to look at that for women and hormones, because we do so much of that, kind of looking at outcomes with that would be great. Adverse effects too. So maybe
100%.
peptides as
Absolutely.
we partner
I would
with
love
it
to do
more,
it.
or maybe we just look at what the outcomes and improvement and healing times are. Well, we will deep dive into more things, and I'm going to push them on the science of muscle building at some point, because I think that that's huge, that dietary stuff and what we can do on our own, because I think that's key with patients. Like, we do our part, but they want to do their part. And so providing them with some basic, ways to approach healing, both nutritionally and exercise wise,
Right.
is huge because they want to do their part. It's a partnership, right? So we'll deep dive into anything you want. So leave comments, like, subscribe, share with friends. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Spencer, for
Thank you.
being here again. And we will see each other again soon.